Let me ask you something that most people never think to ask until it's too late. When you walk into a senior care community and everything looks calm, clean, and friendly, how many caregivers are actually there to help when someone needs it? Not how many are listed on a brochure, not how many names are on a schedule somewhere in an office. I mean, how many real, breathing aides are available right now on the floor helping real people. Today, we're talking about a subject that quietly affects comfort, dignity, safety, and even survival in senior care. It's the dirty secret of staffing ratios. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why this single issue matters more than fancy buildings, glossy tours, or smiling salespeople. Let's ease into this together, because once you see it, you'll never look at senior care the same way again. Here's the first thing most families don't realize. When a community says they have adequate staffing, that phrase doesn't actually mean what you think it means. There's no universal rule that says one aide must care for a certain number of residents at all times. Instead, many places follow the bare minimum required by state regulations, and those minimums are often shockingly low. Imagine this. It's early evening, dinner has just ended. Aides are helping residents back to their rooms. Some need help using the restroom, others need medications, someone's call button is going off, and another resident is feeling dizzy and scared. Now picture all of that being handled by just 2 aides for an entire wing. Not because the staff doesn't care, but because that's all that's scheduled. This is where staffing ratios stop being a technical detail and start becoming very personal. The second uncomfortable truth is that staffing ratios change throughout the day, and almost no one tells you that up front. During a daytime tour, things may look wonderful. There are activities going on, staff members smiling, help seems readily available. But evenings, nights, weekends, and holidays are a completely different story. That's when staffing is often cut back to save money. So while a community may technically meet staffing requirements over a 24-hour period, the actual experience at 2 a.m. is nothing like what you saw at 2 p.m. Now think about this from a resident's point of view. You wake up at night needing help to get to the bathroom. You press the call button and you wait. And wait. Not because someone forgot about you, but because that same aide is already helping 3 other residents at the same time. That wait can mean accidents, falls, embarrassment, or fear, and those moments add up. Here's another piece rarely talked about. Staffing ratios don't just affect response time, they affect relationships. When aides are stretched thin, they're forced into task mode, in and out, rushed conversations, no time to sit, listen, or notice subtle changes in mood, appetite, or health. But those small changes are often the first warning signs that something's wrong. A resident who seems quieter than usual, someone who didn't finish their meal, someone who looks a little unsteady today. When staff have time, these things are noticed early. When staffing is tight, those signals can be missed until they become emergencies. Now let's talk about why this happens, because it's not random. Staffing is one of the biggest expenses for senior care communities. Labor costs cut directly into profit, so the pressure is always there to run lean, to schedule just enough people to technically comply, but not enough to truly support residents at their best. And here's the part that may surprise you. Many caregivers themselves hate this situation. They didn't choose this work to rush people or leave call lights unanswered. High staff-to-resident ratios lead to burnout, high turnover, and constant training of new aides who don't yet know the residents well. That revolving door affects quality of care more than most families ever realize. Let me paint a simple picture. Would you rather be cared for by someone who knows your routines, your preferences, and your fears, or by a new face every few weeks who's still learning where things are and who's who? Staffing ratios quietly determine which of those experiences becomes reality. Now here's where this becomes empowering instead of frightening, because once you understand staffing ratios, you can start asking better questions. You can look beyond the lobby and the sales pitch. You can listen for what isn't being said. Instead of asking, "Are you well staffed?" you start wondering, how many residents is one aide responsible for during the busiest times of day? You begin paying attention to how long call buttons ring during your visit. You notice whether aides seem rushed or present. These small observations tell you far more than any brochure ever could. As we move forward in this conversation, we're going to keep pulling back the curtain on how staffing ratios affect daily life, safety, and long-term outcomes in senior care. And once you see the patterns, you'll start spotting red flags and green flags almost instantly. Now, there's another layer to staffing ratios that almost never gets discussed, and this one is especially important if you're thinking long-term. Staffing isn't just about how many aides are present, it's about who those aides are, how experienced they are, and how often they change. Because a number on paper can look acceptable, while the reality feels chaotic. Here's something to pay attention to. When staffing is tight, communities rely heavily on temporary workers, float staff, or agency aides. These are people who may be kind and capable, but they don't know the residents. They don't know who needs extra time standing up, who gets confused in the evenings, or who is too proud to ask for help even when they desperately need it. That knowledge only comes from consistency. Imagine needing help every day from someone new who doesn't know your routines, your personality, or even how you like your coffee. For many seniors, that constant change creates anxiety. It also increases mistakes. Medications can be delayed, assistance can be rushed, subtle health changes can go unnoticed because no one knows what normal looks like for that person. This is where staffing ratios quietly affect safety in ways that don't make headlines. Another thing most families don't realize is how staffing ratios affect emergencies. Falls, breathing issues, sudden confusion, or chest pain don't wait for convenient moments. When something urgent happens, the difference between one aide caring for 6 residents versus one caring for 15 can be the difference between quick help and dangerous delays. And here's the tricky part. During tours, emergencies aren't happening. Everything feels calm, but emergencies don't announce themselves. They happen at night, during shift changes, or when staff are already stretched thin. That's when ratios matter most. Let's talk about meals for a moment, because food is often where staffing problems first show up. Eating is social, emotional, and physical. Some residents need encouragement. Some need help cutting food. Some eat slowly and need patience. When staffing is thin, meals turn into production lines. Plates are dropped off, picked up quickly, and residents who need extra help may not get it. Weight loss, dehydration, and malnutrition often start quietly, long before anyone labels it a medical issue. Adequate staffing gives aides the time to notice when someone isn't eating well. Inadequate staffing lets those problems grow in silence. Now think about personal dignity. Bathing, dressing, toileting, these are deeply personal moments. When aides are rushed, residents may feel embarrassed, ignored, or even like a burden. That emotional toll matters. Feeling like you're too much trouble can lead people to stop asking for help altogether, which increases risks even more. Here's a powerful question to ask yourself as you listen to all this. Would you feel comfortable relying on this level of staffing if you were having a bad day? Not a good one, a bad one. When you're tired, sore, confused, or scared? That question cuts through the marketing very quickly. Now let's shift to something practical you can actually do with this information. When visiting a community, timing matters. Try to stop by during different parts of the day if you can. Early morning, evening, weekend. Watch how long it takes for someone to respond to a call light. Listen to the hallways. Are aides moving calmly or rushing from room to room? And here's a subtle clue most people miss. Look at the aides' faces. Do they seem overwhelmed? Or do they seem able to make eye contact, exchange a few warm words, and move at a human pace?
Burnout shows up clearly if you know to look for it. It's also worth listening to how staff talk about their work. When staffing ratios are reasonable, aides often speak with pride. When ratios are too high, you'll hear frustration, exhaustion, or vague answers about schedules and coverage. All of this leads to a bigger realization. Staffing ratios aren't just an operational detail. They shape the entire culture of a community. They determine whether care feels personal or institutional, whether residents feel seen or processed. As we continue this conversation, we're going to look at how communities sometimes present staffing numbers in ways that sound reassuring but hide important details, and how you can cut through that confusion with confidence and clarity.
By now, you can probably sense why staffing ratios deserve so much attention, because the final piece of this puzzle is where everything comes together. This is the part where understanding turns into confidence, and confidence turns into better decisions. Here's something that often catches families off guard. When communities talk about staffing numbers, they may combine different roles into one impressive-sounding figure. Nurses, aides, activity staff, even supervisors who rarely provide hands-on care might all be counted together. On paper, the ratio looks comforting. In real life, the number of people actually helping residents dress, bathe, eat, and move safely can be far lower. That's why it's so important to gently but clearly ask who is doing what, not in a confrontational way, but with curiosity. Who helps residents get out of bed? Who responds to call buttons? Who is present overnight when most people are sleeping but help is still needed? These questions don't make you difficult, they make you informed. Another thing to keep in mind is that care needs change over time, but staffing doesn't always adjust with them. A community may have been well-staffed when most residents were independent. Years later, many may need more help, yet staffing levels remain the same. That quiet mismatch can lead to declining quality without anyone officially doing anything wrong. This is why it's helpful to ask how staffing changes as care needs increase. Is additional help added when residents require more assistance, or are expectations simply placed on the same number of aides? The answer to that question tells you a lot about priorities. Now let's talk about peace of mind, because that's what this really comes down to. Knowing that help is available when needed allows residents to relax. It allows families to sleep better at night. When staffing ratios are reasonable, small problems stay small. When they aren't, little issues pile up until they become crises. And here's the hopeful part. There are communities that do this well. Places where staffing is treated as an investment, not an expense. Where aides stay for years because they're supported. Where residents feel known, not rushed. These places exist, and they often don't look flashy. They look calm, steady, human. As you think about all of this, remember that you're allowed to trust your instincts. If something feels off during a visit, it usually is. If you notice residents waiting, staff rushing, or vague answers about coverage, those are signals worth honoring. The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness. Because when you understand staffing ratios, you stop being dazzled by surface-level promises and start focusing on what truly affects daily life. So if this conversation sparked a thought or reminded you of an experience, good or bad, I'd love to hear about it. Share your story or your questions in the comments. These conversations help others who may be feeling unsure or overwhelmed. If you found this helpful, please give the video a like. It helps more people find information they didn't even know they needed. And consider subscribing, because we talk about the things that often go unsaid, but matter deeply as we age and plan ahead. Above all, remember this: you deserve care that feels respectful, responsive, and real. Staffing ratios aren't just numbers. They're the heartbeat of daily life in senior care. And understanding them puts power back where it belongs, in your hands. Here's to making informed choices, asking better questions, and living with dignity at every stage of life.